Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayamitapada Paramahansa Purikacharya Ashtottara Shishimara Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purikacharya Ashtottara Shishimara Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavani Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Now this is kind of loud for this time of night, because I think if I speak at full voice it's going to be too loud. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 8th day of December 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 4 entitled Transcendental Knowledge, and we're at the bottom of page 206. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita Gyanagni dagda karmanam Tamahu panditam buddha. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita Gyanagni dagda karmanam Tamahu panditam buddha. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita Gyanagni dagda karmanam Tamahu panditam buddha. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita Gyanagni dagda karmanam Tamaho panditam buddha. Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita Gyanagni-dagda karmanam tamaho panditam buddha yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita Gyanagni-dagda karmanam tamaho panditam buddha. Yasya, one whose, sarve, all sorts of, samarambha, attempts, kama, based on desire for sense gratification, sankalpa, determination, varjita, are devoid of, jnana, of perfect knowledge, agni, by the fire, dagdha, burned, karmanam, whose work, tam, him, ahu, declare, panditam, learned, buddha, those who know. Translation: one is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. Purport: only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratificatory propensities, it is to be understood that he has burned up the reactions of his work by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is actually learned who has attained to such perfection of knowledge. Development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship to the Lord is compared to fire. Such a fire, once kindled, can burn up all kinds of reactions to work. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, text 18, Krishna says, one who sees inaction in action, and action in inaction, is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So now he's describing the activities and the sankalpa, the determination behind those activities of someone who has this vision, who can see action and inaction, inaction, action. And the key here is this idea of inaction, inaction. The devotees are doing so many things, Vaishnavas, constantly active for Krishna. But they're not doing anything in the sense of karma or work that will produce a reaction, because it's devoid of any material desire, any selfish desire. This is the key. And many people, they're confused by that, because they're doing stuff, we're doing stuff. What's the difference? Well, I'll say what the difference is. We're getting paid, you're not. So no thank you. This is their constricted vision. But it's a great advantage to be able to live in this world and to be progressively freer and freer of reactions, good or bad, any reaction that will bring you back to another birth. And at the same time, be purifying your existence, your senses, your mind, your intelligence, everything, so that you can really experience your true self as a spirit soul and as a servant of Krishna, which entails a life of full bliss, full knowledge, and eternal. So that's what people don't see. They just see the externals, the people who are ignorant. So Krishna is going to systematically describe here this person, the devotee, pure devotee, essentially, who is acting on the basis of this knowledge. First of all, the chapter is entitled Transcendental Knowledge, but it's been made clear that what is meant is that the knowledge which informs your activity, and from the activity you can tell the knowledge. Here, that's what this verse is all about. Here's someone who is free from any kama, any personal desire. Kama sankalpa varjita. I mean, that's really the bottom line. How can you act free of personal desire? Only if that kama has been dovetailed, that desire has been dovetailed into trying to please Krishna, tries to please devotees, is it? There has to be a desire, there has to be a determination. And it's based on your understanding. Who am I? What's my mission in life? Where is my actual platform of enjoyment? I know for many lifetimes, and mostly in this lifetime, I've been thinking that sense gratification is a source of enjoyment. And yet I still find myself frustrated. And now I've read this book and I've heard this philosophy, and there's like a whole other realm of enjoyment, kind of enjoyment. And I've seen it in other devotees, and I've read about it, and I've even maybe experienced a little bit myself, just a hint of it. And so the faith is there, that it's real, and that acting in this way, which is admittedly very strange according to ordinary materialistic vision, is really the highest intelligence. And that's what's being described here, buddhiman. The word buddhiman comes in this both of these verses here. Someone who's intelligent can see how those who are so-called inactive, they're actually acting. Lying on the bed for 12 hours sleeping, they're acting. They're in mind, there's so many dreams are going on, and they're in the mode of ignorance, and their future is not very bright if they keep doing that. And how devotees who are doing all kinds of activities are really not acting in the sense of performing any fruitive activity that's going to be a reaction. So the emphasis here is on burning all the reactions. In other words, this is the platform that Krishna is speaking on right now. How to work in this world in such a way that you become free from previous reactions and you don't incur any new ones. And in this way, you're heading toward liberation. That's the platform he's on. But as Prabhupada makes clear in all the purports, that's only possible in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service. Okay, any questions on this verse? Let's go on. Tyaktva karma palasangam nityatripto narashayaha karmanyabhipavittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Purport. This freedom from the bondage of actions is possible only in Krishna consciousness, when one is doing everything for Krishna. A Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of his action. He's not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left to Krishna. Nor is he anxious to secure things, nor to protect things already in his possession. He does his duty to the best of his ability and leaves everything to Krishna. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. It is as though he were not doing anything. This is the sign of akarma, or actions without fruitive reactions. Any other action, therefore, devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding upon the worker. And that is the real aspect of vikarma, as explained herein before. So, Prabhupada's making it very explicit here. And karma pala sangam, to be free of the attachment to the fruits of your activity. Now you can see how radical that is. I mean, then the immediate question, well, why work at all? You want me to do some job, and I'm not going to be able to get paid, I don't have to do, what's going on? So it has to be explained and illuminated through knowledge that the fruit of such work is a million times more valuable, than something that you supposedly enjoy. That fruit is a poison fruit, because even though you may make money, you may get established, you have a house, that's all just different aspects of your shackles in this material world. That ensures your rebirth and therefore suffering. In other words, it's a huge con. It's a huge illusion that Maya is throwing at us, that we can somehow establish some position in this world of security and happiness and steady sense gratification. But this the force of time. You can see it takes it all away. It destroys everything. And the understanding. I mean, it doesn't take long living in this material to see that everything is in flux, that people die, that so-called nice situations are ruined. I remember when I was a kid. I remember the first time someone who I knew died. It was a shocking thing. It was my grandmother. You know, I mean, if no one, you've lived, I don't know whether 7 or 8 years old, and you know, nobody I knew has ever died. So that whole idea just wasn't part of my experience. I mean, I may have known theoretically, you know, George Washington lived and he died, lived and died, but it wasn't real for me. Here was someone who I knew, who I liked, we had a relationship, you know, and this and that. And then she died, you know. And I remember lying on the couch and kind of trying to deal with that whole thing. Of course, I didn't have any way of dealing with it really more. It was just like, all right, you know, grandma's gone, but now, you know, let me go out and play, you know, like that. So you forget. But that's an intrinsic part of material life, is that it's temporary. There's no situation here. And so there's this understanding by the devotees, well, how can I use the time that I have for my greatest benefit? That was Arjun's question. Yakshreya yaksya nishtitam bruhi tanmay. Please tell me for certain how I can act for my ultimate good. Shreya. This word shreya is very important, as opposed to prayas, which is immediate. Or, okay, you know, 10 years, you'll have a degree and you'll be able to get a good job. That's also prayas, you know, ultimately. So those questions are being answered here. First, he's outlining how one can be free from that bondage of karma, which is a big thing. Of course, devotees ultimately they don't even worry about that, but it's a very important motivator in the first as you take up devotional service. Nitya Tripta, I love that. There's actually a devotee named Nitya Tripta, who you probably might know. There's a lady who worked in the archives for many years, photographer. None of you were here, but have you ever seen that book, Darshan, from deities from all over the world? It's a big, you know, one of these coffee table books. She was a photographer for that, and she came and took some very beautiful pictures of Radha and Gaura Nitai. And because I have on my iPad, I have a whole set of those, you know. And I said, whenever I see that one, I think of her and Gandharvika, because she dressed those deities at that time. And her name Nitya Tripta. It's a great. It's right from this verse. Means eternally satisfied. How can you be eternally satisfied unless you're linking up your source of happiness to the eternal person, to the eternal source of satisfaction, Krishna? Certainly not anything in this world can make you Nitya Tripta. That's for sure. So that's why they go together, being unattached to the fruits of your activity. As soon as you're attached, you're bound. Oh, I'm enjoying so much, I got this fruit, but then the fruit is taken away. Or your ability to taste the fruit is taken away. One way or another, the relationship is going to be broken. But if you're linked up to Krishna, that relationship never has to be broken. It's never truly broken, we've just forgotten it. So that's how you can be Nitya Tripta, eternally satisfied, and nirashriya, without any shelter of this in this material world. There really is no shelter here, right? I mean, there's false shelters, the false boat, you know, trying to, like, what is that verse? Balasyane shadadam pitaro nasingha nartasya chaganamudhanvanimanjato now taptasya tatpadavidya ihanjashestas tavad vibho tanabudham anupekshitanam, I think something like that. These last lines are leaving me now. But this is a verse by Prahlad Maharaj. He's in his prayers. He's saying, unless you bestow your mercy, any means that we have, that we employ in this world to try to counteract a difficulty. He gives some examples. He says the parents can't really protect their child. You know, that's a main motivation of millions and billions of people in this world, somehow to protect this child of mine or children. But disasters happen all the time. Without Krishna's blessing, that can't happen. A doctor, unless he is blessed, all of his efforts at curing a disease or helping a patient will fail. A boat, someone who's fallen in the ocean, you know, the lifeboat comes, but without your blessing, it can't save the person. So there's taking shelter of Krishna means that you can not have to worry about other shelter in this world. That's what surrender means. Rakshishyatiti vishvaso, the determination that Krishna will always protect. And when you read his Leela in Vrindavan, so many dangers, you know, the storms of Indra, so many demons, two forest fires coming, the bull demon, the ass demon. So many threats. Kamsa is always behind the scene. And yet the residents knew who to call on, and they were always saved. So that's how you can be nirashriya. And such persons, even though engaged in all kinds of activities, apparently, they're actually doing nothing at all. Naiva kinchit karoti sa. So this inaction in action is what we're trying to achieve here. And I think this word is important. Naishkarmyam, this is what he's describing. Activity that doesn't produce any reaction. So in a sense, you're not doing anything. And he continues to describe these persons, the devotees. Text 21. Nirashir yata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. Purport. A Krishna-conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna-conscious person is always dovetailed with the supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna-conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship, even over his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession, yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna-conscious person fully engaged in self-realization has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating money. He does not, therefore, become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. So, one thing that's being described here is this concept of Vairagya. Vairagya, which means dispassion. The concept of renunciation may include Vairagya, but it's a little different emphasis. Tyaga means literally giving something up. You still may desire it, but you give it up. And in Krishna consciousness, you give it up and you soon lose the desire for it. Out of sight, out of mind. Because you're getting higher desire. Param Justvana Vartate. This verse, Vishayavani Vartante Nadahara Siddhina. Read it in chapter 2. Cogent for us. That you can by force give up things that you know are harmful for you. People do it all the time. There's probably about 50, I don't know how many millions, tens of millions of people on a diet in this country. And how many million trying to give up alcohol and cigarettes and all these things at any time. So, but it's so difficult because you're giving it up, but the desire is still there. And you know from experience in the right atmosphere that desire will become overwhelming and you'll fall off the wagon, so to speak. If you're doing, especially alcohol. So that's tyaga, but now vairagya. It's the vairagya that's more important. Vairagya means bring it on. In other words, you could be like Prabhupada showed perfectly. He's walking down Broadway, and I explained this because I grew up in New York, and there's all these movie theaters and bars and all these things and scantily clad ladies, whatever. And Prabhupada's just fixed on trying to sell some Bhagavatams, completely detached. Like Haridas Thakur, the ideal. Well, how can you do that? By getting the higher taste, and not just getting it once, but tasting it moment by moment, which completely inoculates you against the allurements of Maya. Maya actually gives you up, because there's no entry there. You're fully feeling the attraction to Krishna and the presence of Krishna and your relationship with Krishna, which itself gives such a high pleasure that these other pleasures are just rejected. You remember that famous verse? I think we heard it twice already. Aman yudyatam rantam asit tadabadabatanari sangame smaryamani bhavati mukhavikaro sushtu nishtivanamcha. So here's Yamunacharya, who I read the story fairly recently, where he was a wonderful devotee as a young man. You know, he was very precocious and brilliant scholar, and he engaged in some debate with a court pundit, and it was such a thing because he was only like 14, 15, and here this pundit had defeated all the leading pundits, you know, and he seemed to be invincible. So I wish I could remember the tricks. Did you ever read that? And I'll try to read it. Anyway, He won the argument. Then the king was so taken with him, you know, and the challenge and his courage that he said, well, okay, if you can actually defeat my court pundit, I'll give you half my kingdom. Wow. Okay. So he went on. So he defeated the court pundit and gets half a kingdom. Suddenly now he's a king. He's got his own kingdom. So he went down that road, and you know, and so this verse. So then what happened was that at a certain point, after some years, some of his old friends, devotee friends, one of them, they said, well, let's see if we can save him from this, because he's deep in the well now of material, you know, degradation. And so the old friend came to the court and invited him to go on a walk. He said, oh, yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I remember. We had a great time. Let's go on a walk together. So they started walking, and as he's walking, he's chanting all these nectar verses that he knew back in the school, you know. And he starts remembering it, and gradually he said, let's keep walking. Let's get out of the kingdom. So again he took up life renunciation. And having experienced the full, you know, experience of being a king with all of its opportunities for sense gratification. So this is one of the verses, I think it's part of the Stotra Ratna. He wrote the Stotra Ratna, which Prabhupada quotes a lot. So it means, ever since, Yadabadi Mama Chetak, my consciousness, Krishna Pada Aravinde, Nama Nama Nasadaman Yuditam Rantamasi, ever since I've been able to enjoy moment to moment the rasa of serving Krishna's lotus feet, that pleasure is so great that whenever any thoughts, because those bubble up involuntarily, remembrance of sex life with my harem or whatever, he just twists his mouth and spits at the thought. Prabhupada always say spite. This is one of the words that spite. So that's quite a reaction. You know, I mean, we get these bubbles come up, you know, and we don't quite spit at the thought. So, get out of there. You know, I don't want to think of that. But it's a perfect example of Vairagya, the power of bhakti to change your whole consciousness, so that the temptation, there's no kama there anymore. That's the thing. It's been revived or purified back into prema. You remember that great purport at the end of chapter 3, where Arjuna asks, "What's the real enemy? Or why do we do things against our own will, our own interest? What force, as if by force, you know?" And of course the answer is kama. And there's so much instruction in there. What is the effect for different degrees, you know, of covering? And when that kama is strong, it covers your knowledge. Avritam jnanametina jnanino nityavaidina, this eternal enemy. That's what's keeping us here. That strong power of prema, ladani shakti. When we direct that ladani shakti, we want to emanate it ourselves. That becomes kama, the source of all kinds of miseries. In the spiritual world, it's the source of all the bliss. Ladani Shakti, Radharani expands all the devotees and everything, and they're all engaging in their service to Krishna, and it's the highest ecstasy, all varieties of bliss. But when we want to try to imitate Krishna or be the owners and the enjoyers, then we try to take possession of that Ladani Shakti and try to emanate it ourselves, and that's called kama. But then it becomes a source of misery. So, but the knowledge is covered. This chapter is all about knowledge. So uncovering that knowledge, or regaining our original knowledge, accompanied by the actions on the basis of that knowledge, otherwise the knowledge leaves. That can put us in the position of complete vairagya and strong attachment to Krishna. That's the idea here. So, nirashir, no asha. Here comes this word asha again. You remember asha? We sing every morning. It's several times in that. I think twice in that song. You know, my ardent desire is to be a servant of Radharani. My ardent desire is to be please make me your maidservant. So that asha bandha. Vijay Prabhu was talking about those 9 preliminary symptoms of ecstasy. What is this asha bandha? This strong hope, aspiration for perfection in devotional service. Without that, you're not going to get it. That's the price, remember? You agreed for it. So here, there's also material asha. It's described in the 16th chapter. Asha pasha, shatar bandha. I don't know if you remember that line. It just rhyme, it has a rhyming thing. Asha pasha shatar bandha. You're bound by thousands of ropes of material aspirations, the demons. Asha pasha shatar. So those aspirations have to be turned to Krishna. And so here's a nirashir, no material asha, no material aspirations. Mind controlled because it's fixed on Krishna. Chakta sarva parigraha. All parigraha is sense of proprietorship. Yeah, parigraha means graha, grabbing, holding on. Chakta. Sharidam kevalam karma, just acting to keep body and soul together. Minimal. The body becomes a tool for serving Krishna. So you take care of the cars, you take care of your body. It's the same idea. It's a responsibility, but not extravagance. Kurva natnavdi kilbisham, then you can become completely sinless. That means that your everything you do is auspicious. So this is a wonderful description here, and it's a Krishna conscious person. And you move like an animal, meaning that that when you think about it, pure devotee, everything is doing, the original impetus for that action is something that Krishna wants. Now it can be a whole project, like Prabhupada starting the movement and so many things. But every little action, for making a phone call, you read Prabhupada's letters. What are the letters? He's encouraging his devotees. He's writing to India in the beginning there, trying to get some funds. How to get this thing going? Well, maybe I'll buy a building here in Manhattan. Eventually that happened, but everything had its purpose. But it wasn't Prabhupada's own purpose. It was for Krishna, for a spiritual master, fulfilling what Chaitanya, encouraging his devotees, managing ISKCON, moving money here and there. None of it was his own idea. How can I be happy? It's all like for others, and he was always at the highest levels of bliss. Okay, here's another one. This line I remember years ago memorizing. Yadvicha labha santushto. To be satisfied with what comes easily of its own accord. Yadvicha labha santushto dvanvatito vimatsaraha samak siddha vasiddhaucha kritvapi nanabhadyate. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. Purport: a Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with gains which are obtained of their own accord. He neither begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as is in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood. He does accept engagement in anyone's service. Wow, there's a word missing there. Not. But what edition is this? My God. He does not accept engagement in anyone's service if it might hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. Jeez,
He does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service.
Yeah, that's been fixed. But that's not what. This may be a late edition. What's the date on that? No, I think we've been printing this book without this knot in it. These knots. This is 2013. Yours is probably earlier than that. I think so. What's the year? You say the current printing? Yours is 2008, and it has the same thing. Yeah. This is a later printing in it. Yeah, this is 2013. Anyway, I'll look into it. God. But that's what it should say.
What should it say?
It should say, he does not accept engagement in anyone's service if it might hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness.
That's more correct. That's more
Yes. Yeah.
allowing
No.
anyone's service to hamper his own.
Yeah, this is the point, that he doesn't accept service.
That one has a word.
Yeah, kind of an important word. Not. Oh boy. However, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of heat and cold, or misery and happiness. A Krishna-conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, he is steady both in success and in failure. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. Okay, so this idea of being satisfied, which comes easily of its own accord, obviously that can only happen if you're getting a good taste of Krishna consciousness, right? I mean, here you are sitting in, America, a major city. There's so many opportunities for trying to enjoy. How can you be satisfied with practically nothing? Only if you're getting satisfaction from another side. And that's the magic, if you will, of the Harinam Sankirtan. Not necessarily outside or anywhere. If we really have nice kirtan, then that provides so much satisfaction that you can tolerate a whole lot of things you never would have been able to tolerate before, and be satisfied with very little. I remember there's some pictures I have that surfaced a few years ago of the devotees in New York in like 73. And these pictures weren't taken by devotees. They were taken by a professional photographer who much later, like a few years ago, we're talking about 40 years later or 35 years later, became fairly famous and had a show. And she resurrected these old pictures that she'd taken when she was a young photographer or whatever, And so she thought it would add to the show. She was going to put them on display if there were names, So she Googled Krishna and came up with Krishna.com, the site. And so she sent there. Do you guys know? She sent the pictures. Do you guys know who? He says no, but someone recognized me in one of the pictures. And my 25 years old. That's like 50 years ago. And said, well, maybe I know, because they knew me, so they wrote me and said, yeah, I know everyone in there. But it's funny, because there's one guy, I've got a Reservoir of Pleasure, maybe a couple of books, and I'm preaching to some businessmen, and there's the big buildings of Manhattan right behind me, And so I'm skinny as a rail, because I actually was a raw food guy, like a year before I was putting on some. And we had collective laundry. We didn't have our own clothes. You have to go pick out a dhoti and a kirtan. Of course, mostly they didn't match, so it's completely unmatched, even today. But really unmatched. But, I mean, everyone was totally blissful. It was a Harinam party, and we'd go out and distribute a little, like that. So that was, that was what the movement was. That's why the movement could take off. Because Prabhupada brought the most valuable thing, the Hare Krishna mantra. And he would just chant and chant and chant, and he got to a place where people were into it. They were ready to try stuff, because LSD, suddenly they were open to a whole bunch of stuff. And so you got enough people chanting where they got purified to really, get serious. And that was how the movement actually started. And that's how it's been sustained. So you can see all these verses, they're only he's describing the person who's free of material desire, who is in transcendental knowledge, and it's only possible in Krishna consciousness. How can you be satisfied with what comes easily of its own accord? Interesting enough, here we got this homeless problem now for so many years, and these poor guys, mostly guys, occasionally you see a female. They're trying to get their little corner together, and they've got some of their little possessions together, but it's a disaster, I mean, you got to go do something. You come back and everything is stolen or thrown away. So they're never satisfied. They're externally, in one sense, like the Goswamis, They're just living here and there, But the consciousness is 180 degrees different. They're completely unsatisfied. They're in great anxiety. They're always fearful. They're trying to find some form of intoxication, But this is the same platform in one sense, but in knowledge and purity. Yadrasha labhasantushto, to be satisfied, which comes easily. In other words, you may work very hard in Krishna consciousness, and we should, but materially, you may there may not be much that you may get. You get prasadam, and the bare necessities of life will be provided. But it's completely satisfying because you're hooked up to that real level of satisfaction. And dvandvatito, surpassed duality. So that means you're becoming transcendental, and vimatsara, free from envy, in both its senses. Free from envy, and as I explained sometimes, envy in Prabhupada's vocabulary often also means bearing malice to head, which is not a common meaning in the West. Envy means jealous, Well, both of those you want to be free of. How can you be jealous of anyone if you feel wealthy in Krishna consciousness? You see? And don't bear any malice, even the bugs. Like I just took my walk, and I realized as I'm walking up in here, and I saw them. As I looked, I had my light down. There's little different kinds of bugs, dashing across the sidewalk. And I have to be careful, not to injure them. Samak siddhava siddhaucha, to be equipoised, steady in success or failure. Well, if you're invested in the success for your livelihood or for your prestige or something, you're not going to be indifferent. If you fail, it can be a crushing experience. But if it's all for Krishna, you try your best and you leave the result up to Krishna. Because even just the effort is a success in Krishna consciousness. Not so in material things. Krishna, look, after all, what are we aiming for? We're aiming to develop our relationship with Krishna. And He's looking for your sincere effort. There's nothing that He really needs from us. He's trying to encourage us in Krishna consciousness. So, samak siddhava siddhaucha, and you remain completely unbound. You're completely unbound by these activities, and they're removing your previous bondage. All right, let's do another one. 23. Gata sangasya muktasya Gyanavastita chetasaha Yagyaya chadata karma Samagram pramaliyate. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. Purport. Becoming fully Krishna conscious, one is freed from all dualities and thus is free from the contaminations of the material modes. He can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna, and thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna, who is the primeval Vishnu. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices, because sacrifice aims at satisfying the Supreme Person, Krishna or Vishnu. The resultant reactions to all such works certainly merge into transcendence, and one does not suffer material effects. So we're heading toward 24. But gata sangasya muktasya. So gata sangasya means his attachment for the modes of nature is gone. It's gone. Gata sangasya of such a liberated person, situated in transcendence and knowledge, in knowledge too. And he acts for the sake of Krishna, Yagya or Krishna. So that emphasizes that his life is actually sacrifice. You sacrifice your whole life for the mission of Krishna, And so you can imagine how auspicious that is, and what you have to look forward to. You feel like you're back to Godhead already. The pure devotees, they're already living their eternal relationship with Krishna, and they sacrifice everything, and they get reciprocation from Krishna, the loving reciprocation. So that's completely satisfying. Samagram prabaliyates. So it all merges, meaning that there's no residue of sinful reaction or anything like that. It's completely pure and is purifying. So this is what we're aiming for. And it's only possible in Bhakti Yoga. Because otherwise, if there's an effort to understand, Brahman in the impersonal sense, and wanting to, your motivation is liberation, that's generally what the Brahmavadis are looking for. But without Krishna, there's no cleansing of the heart. And so that desire for mukti becomes itself kama. That's why Lord Chaitanya says, bhukti mukti siddhi kami. Kami means a person who's full of kama, material desire for himself. So it's mukti kami, bhukti kami, and siddhi kamis. Siddhi means want all kinds of yogic powers, and the bhukti kamis want all kinds of material things. And the mukti kamis are very desirous of that I break out of this bound of birth and death and become liberated and free of all suffering. No empathy for others, So that's none of that can really bring peace. The only thing that can bring real peace is to transmute or sublimate the kama back into prema by the process of bhakti yoga. So, any questions or comments? Okay. Let us go on. This is a famous one. Brahmapanam brahmahavir brahmagno brahmanahutam brahmaivatina gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Purport. How activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds, or as we say, yogurt. That's been changed. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness, or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahman, means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyoti, but when the Jyoti is covered by illusion or maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are, all combined together, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the Absolute Truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice for the Absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything, becomes one in the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Just like this is a sacrifice, You're not doing a million other things that you could be doing, sacrificing your time, your intention. This is like a jnana yajna. But you can see how, as in a kirtan, that certainly is yajna, sankirtan yajna, right? But it doesn't really feel like a yajna when you really get into it, does it? So, well, this is great, Your kirtan is going on, or you're out there, and people are responding, and you're floating along on the holy name, because there's a transcendental connection to the reservoir of pleasure in Krishna. The holy name is really Krishna, right? What is that famous verse? Namachindamani Krishnas. You know this one? Chaitanya rasa vigraha purnak shuddho nityamukto abhinatva nama namina. I just want to let you know, there's so many resources out there. There's something called the VIHE, which is the Vrindavan Institute of Higher Education. It began in Mayapur with the Mayapur Institute of Higher Education. And so many seminars they've had. So there's a site. It's called VIHE. And on that site, you'll find so many recordings. I happen to know the lady who runs the VIHE. She's a disciple of Lokanath Swami. And every time I used to go there in the early aughts, to Vrindavan, I used to go every year. She would have me go out, do an outing to one of the spots in Vrindavan. There's Lalita's appearance place, Radharani's appearance place, and do some shlokas, and stuff like that. So anyway, she also posted my recordings on there. But I was just listening to this beautiful holy name seminar, japa seminar, given by Burijan Prabhu. Many years ago. It was probably at least 20 years ago now. And you can access that. You can hear that. And there's so many things, Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu lectures. And they're all like, they're like little courses. It's not just a class. They're progressive courses. How to improve your japa. It's great stuff, So there's so many resources that we have. But here, this is a great purport. Everything becomes spiritual because it's being dovetailed for Krishna, including our consciousness, our own senses. It's an old analogy that Prabhupada would always give of the iron and the fire. How when our consciousness is fixed on Krishna, then purification takes place, just like going out in the sun. You don't have to do anything more. Just think of Krishna, link up all of your facilities to Krishna, then everything becomes spiritualized. Brahmaparnam, Brahmahavi, everything turns into Brahman, spiritualized. People can't see the difference, but you can feel the difference in yourself, that you're becoming purified, you're becoming more peaceful. Just like there's one pandemic going on, but there's also another epidemic of depression and anxiety. More suicides going on, a lot of divorce and breakups because people can't live together 24 hours, and like that. It's a horrific thing going on. And here we are, getting up early, going to Mangal Artik, chanting Hare Krishna. It's not, there's certain restrictions that are kind of crimping our style. You can't go out and do book distribution, whatever. But we're not going through the major psychological traumas here. If you're actually following you're chanting your rounds, you're doing your duties, the beautiful deities, the hand, Radharani's hand. This is a mudra, fearlessness. She's Bhayadhan. That's the name of that mudra, Where if you're really trying to serve, you can get into that. Oh, Radharani is assuring us it's going to be okay. Just keep chanting and serving and meditating. We read about so many things in the Bhagavatam. Huge, conflagrations and annihilations and so many things. This pandemic, it's heavy duty. But what are we going to do? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's an impetus for taking care of it. What does Kunti say? That famous prayer about let those calamities happen again. Vipadak santu takshashvat tatta tatta jagad guru bhavatu darshanam yaksyad apunar bhavadarshanam. So she enumerates some of the calamities that took place before and during the battle. They were exiled to the forest, so many hardships, and humiliated Draupadi and the whole thing. And then the battlefield itself was so dangerous, and all that Krishna was with them. So why did these intimate devotees and friends of Krishna, why did they have to go through such hardship? Why didn't Krishna protect them? But she's saying, oh, let them happen again and again. Because by those happening, we could see you, within and without. Because in that distressed condition, we called on to you from the bottom of our heart, and you were always there. So that's the silver lining here, is that we can see. You're reading in the books about the dangers of birth and death in the material world, but it's all around us. And so, therefore, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Let's be serious. Stay serious and become more serious. And everything becomes spiritualized. The chair, the air. I mean, it's all spiritual because it's related to Krishna. And by our efforts, just like this temple. I mean, yet many of you saw those pictures that Purusha publicized of how the temple was developed, I mean, just to see, the dedication of Guru Maharaj and his wife going to India, figuring it all out, working for a year, doing all these carvings, it's unique in ISKCON. So much devotion. We're benefiting from that. And we can also benefit others by our own, little efforts in devotion. Whatever it may be, cleaning the temple, presenting Krishna consciousness, chanting nicely, and eventually this thing will be over, and we'll be able to welcome people into Krishna consciousness. And now we have another new bhakta coming, Larry. I mean, he's an old bhakta, but he's coming back, taking shelter. All right, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Hari Hari Bol. Brahma